In the last video, we saw how we can create a sign up and a login page using RDS and Django. In this video, we are going to see how we can render dynamic data onto a front end and we can take this data from the database. So this is the front end that we had built last time. I already have a user in the database, so I'm just going to log in with that user. This is the home page of the user, and it displays the name that is taken with which we are logging in right now. If we scroll at the bottom, we see the data. So this is the data that we are going to try to render dynamically, and this data is stored in the database right now. Let's go to the database and see how the database is. So let's run this query. So this is the product data table, and these are the entries in the data. We have the product ID, name, price, and the path of the product image, and we are going to render this data now. Now let's move to the code. If you go to the models.py, where we will be having our SQL query. So here is the SQL query that we have written. It's a simple select query which selects all the data from the product data table, and it is going to return the product data. We are going to call this function into our views.py. Let's move to the views.py. In this case, we are calling this function in the login data function only because we want to render this data only when the user is trying to log in, and the data should be rendered only when the password and the email matches with the password and the email which was used during registration, right? So this is what we had already seen in the last video. In this video, we are just going to add one line, which is the models.get product data, and we're going to store all the data that we have taken from the database into the variable product data, right? And I've added in this function the session part as well, so that a session is started on our web browser. This is using cookies, and if the user is set and the session is created, we are going to return the home page which we have already created. This is the homepage.html, and we are going to pass the name of the user and the entire product data that we just fetched from the database. All right, so this is what we do to get the database and render it onto the backend part. Now we need to put this data onto the front end. So we move to the homepage.html, since that is the page that we are rendering. That is the page that we want to display the data. So when we go to the homepage.html, this is the part where we wish to show all the data. So since we have a lot of data, the ideal scenario is that we just loop over the div tags and the href and whatever type of data that you want to display. In this case, we have an image. That's why we have a anchor tag with an image tag. We do have a h3 tag, which is just the name of the product, and the price, which is a p tag, right? And the entire thing is enclosed in a div tag. We have used form in this case again, and we have also used bootstrap so that it can be uh, responsive when you look when you look the website onto a phone or a tab, right? So what we're doing right now, so we have returned product data, and we are going to use that variable, and we are going to loop through it. So we are using the Jinja template again in this, like we saw in the last video as well. So when we loop through it, we are going to store, so this is going to be a dictionary. So we are looping through it, and we are going to add the values of each and every column that was there in the product data which we fetched from the database, and we are going to use the dot operator to mention the columns and the values for that particular column. So when I do d.3, it mentions the third column and all the values in the third column, right? So if you see, the third column in the database was the image. If we consider it starts from 0, and d.1 and d.2 is going to be the name and the price, right? And this is how we render the data. So when you go back to your website, that is what we get: the image, the name, the price, and this is the button. So we are rendering the button as well. And since we want the user to move from this particular product to the next page if the person wishes to order, then we have to enclose this in the form tag. That's why this is enclosed in the form tag. And it's going to it is going to call the payment function, which will render another HTML page where we can put the details of the payment and the address details as well. So let's see that as well. So let's assume that the user wants to uh, order this product. So if you click on buy now, it comes over here and it calls the payment function, and this particular page is rendered. So this is the payment.html page. All right. So this is what we can see in the next video, and we can look at the data and how we can add this data onto the database. All right. But for this video, I guess we just wanted to see how we could render the data dynamically, and this is how we can do it. So that's it for this video. If you like our content, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.